Commander Zextai clicked his mandibles in frustration as he reviewed the morning's incident reports. 3 more guard casualties in Sector 7. The containment facility had lost 12 personnel in the past month alone, all assigned to watch over Subject 47, the creature they'd captured from the dead world of Kepler 442b. The Galactic Confederation's finest soldiers couldn't last more than a week guarding that thing. The Vrex warriors, known for their unbreakable resolve, had requested transfers after witnessing what Subject 47 could do. Even the stone-skinned Carathians, who felt no pain, had refused further assignments. Sir, his aide Lieutenant Yilla approached nervously, her blue skin pale with worry. The High Council is demanding answers. We've lost too many good soldiers to this whatever it is. Zextai's 4 eyes focused on the data pad, displaying Subject 47's file. The creature stood barely 7 feet tall, covered in dark, chitinous armor that seemed to absorb light itself. Its limbs were too long, joints bending in ways that hurt to look at. But the worst part was its face, if you could call it that. A smooth, featureless surface that somehow conveyed malevolent intelligence. What about the Thackeray? Zextai asked, referring to the insectoid species known for their hive mind coordination. Requested emergency evacuation after 6 hours, sir. Their report mentioned psychological contamination and existential terror beyond comprehension. The commander's 3 hearts sank. If the Thackeray, who could share traumatic experiences across their entire collective to dilute the impact, couldn't handle this assignment, what could? Sir, Yilla hesitated. There is one option we haven't tried. What? The humans. Zextai's mandibles clicked in disbelief. The humans? Those new species that just joined the Confederation? They're barely past atomic technology. Their soldiers are soft, emotional creatures who form attachments to everything. They wouldn't last an hour with Subject 47. With respect, sir, that might be exactly what we need. Every species we've assigned has approached this as a standard containment protocol. Professional distance, military discipline, fear-based compliance. What if we need something different? The commander considered this. Humans were strange, even by galactic standards. They'd only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, yet they'd somehow talked their way into Confederation membership through sheer diplomatic persistence and an unsettling willingness to help solve everyone else's problems. Their military record is concerning, Zextai noted. They seem to have difficulty following orders when they disagree with them. Very undisciplined. Yes, sir, but they also show remarkable adaptability. And they have this unusual trait. They tend to anthropomorphize everything. They see personality and emotion where other species see only data or threat assessment. Zextai pulled up the human military files. Strange reading, indeed. Reports of human soldiers adopting local fauna as mascots during peacekeeping missions. Instances of humans forming emotional bonds with their equipment, naming their weapons and vehicles. Stories of human engineers who talked to malfunctioning computers as if they were sulking children. Most bizarrely, there were documented cases of humans successfully negotiating with hostile alien species by treating them as misunderstood individuals rather than threats to be eliminated. It's worth a try, Zextai decided. Contact the human contingent. Tell them we have a special assignment that requires their unique perspective. Within 6 standard hours, 3 humans had volunteered. Commander Sarah Chun, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and laugh lines around her eyes. Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, a broad-shouldered man covered in scars who smiled too easily for someone in his profession. And Specialist Jenny Park, barely out of training, but with the kind of intense curiosity that made her superiors nervous. Thank you for volunteering, Zextai began as they stood in his office. This assignment is unusual. We need someone to guard a captured hostile entity. Every other species has failed. Commander Chen nodded. What kind of failure rate are we talking about? Complete. Either psychological breakdown, physical trauma, or death within 2 weeks maximum. The 3 humans exchanged glances. Rodriguez grinned. Sounds like Tuesday. I must stress, Zextai continued. This creature is unlike anything we've encountered. It seems to possess some form of psychic ability that induces terror and despair in most sapient beings. Several guards have been found catatonic. Others have. Well, let's just say the recovery teams needed counseling afterward. Specialist Park raised her hand. Has anyone tried talking to it? The question caught Zextai off guard. Talking to it? Yeah. I mean, you call it a creature and a subject, but has anyone actually tried to communicate with it? Find out what it wants or where it came from? Specialist, Lieutenant Yilla interjected. This entity has killed or psychologically destroyed every guard assigned to it. Communication isn't exactly a priority when dealing with such a clear threat. Commander Chin stepped forward. With respect, Lieutenant, that's exactly when communication becomes most important. Fear makes everything worse. If this thing has been in captivity for months without anyone trying to understand it, no wonder it's acting hostile. Zextai felt his 3 hearts skip beats. This was exactly the kind of illogical human thinking that made other species uncomfortable. They seemed to approach every problem as if it were just a misunderstanding waiting to be resolved. Very well, he said finally. You'll be assigned to 12-hour shifts. Commander Chan will take the day rotation, Sergeant Rodriguez the evening, and Specialist Park the night shift. Standard containment protocols apply. Maintain distance, report any unusual activity, and, under no circumstances, attempt to enter the containment chamber. What about weapons? Rodriguez asked. Every previous guard has been fully armed. It made no difference. Chin shrugged. Then, we'll try something different. 3 hours later, Commander Chin stood outside Containment Cell 7, reviewing the briefing materials one final time. The creature inside had been captured during a raid on a derelict space station orbiting a dead planet. Initial scans suggested it was some form of bioengineered guardian, possibly left behind by whatever species had originally inhabited the system. The cell itself was a marvel of Confederation technology, reinforced walls capable of withstanding nuclear detonation, gravitic field generators that could alter local physics, and enough monitoring equipment to track the inhabitants' vital signs down to the cellular level. Chin approached the observation window and got her first look at Subject 47. The briefings hadn't done it justice. The creature was beautiful in a terrible way, like a living shadow given form. Its movements were fluid, almost dance-like, as it paced the confines of its cell. There was an intelligence in its posture, a deliberate quality to its actions that suggested deep thought rather than mindless aggression. "Hello there," Chin said quietly, activating the comm system. "I am Sada. I'll be keeping you company for the next few hours." The creature stopped moving. For a long moment, it stood perfectly still, then slowly turned toward the observation window. Chun felt a chill run down her spine as that featureless face seemed to focus on her, but she didn't step back. "I know you probably can't understand me," she continued, "but I thought you might like to know someone's here. Being alone can't be fun, especially in a place like this." The creature tilted its head, a remarkably human gesture that caught Chin off guard. Then, to her amazement, it moved closer to the window. Chin had expected to feel the terror that had broken so many other guards. Instead, she felt sadness. Looking at the creature, she saw something that reminded her of her own daughter during thunderstorms, scared, alone, and lashing out because it didn't know what else to do. "You've been here for months, haven't you?" she said softly. "No one's tried to talk to you. No one's tried to understand what you need. That must be incredibly frustrating." The creature pressed one elongated hand against the reinforced glass. The gesture was unmistakably reaching, an attempt to connect despite the barrier between them. Chun felt tears prick her eyes. This wasn't a monster. This was a frightened being trapped in a situation it couldn't control, reacting the only way it knew how. She placed her own hand against the glass, matching the creature's gesture. "It's okay," she whispered. "I see you." For the next 11.5 hours, Chin talked. She told the creature about Earth, about humans, about her daughter who was studying xenobiology and would probably find all this fascinating. She described sunsets and oceans, music and art, all the beautiful things that made life worth living. The creature listened. It didn't attack, didn't try to escape, didn't emit whatever psychic aura had broken the previous guards. It simply sat by the window and listened to Chen's voice. When Sergeant Rodriguez arrived for the evening shift, he found Chun still at her post, chatting about her grandmother's cookie recipes while the creature sat cross-legged near the observation window like an attentive student. "How's it going?" Rodriguez asked quietly. "Good," Chun replied, surprised to realize she meant it. "Really good. I think our friend here just needed someone to talk to." Rodriguez looked through the window at the creature, which had turned its attention to the new arrival. He felt the same chill that had preceded terror in so many others, but Rodriguez had survived 3 wars and raised 4 teenagers. Fear was just another emotion to acknowledge and work through. "Hey there, buddy," he said to the creature. "I'm Mike. Sarah here tells me you're a good listener." The creature stood and approached the window again, that head tilt gesture becoming more pronounced. It was learning, Rodriguez realized, picking up on human body language and trying to mirror it. Chun gathered her things. "It likes stories," she told Rodriguez, "and it seems to respond well to calm voices. Don't treat it like a prisoner or a threat. Just be yourself." As Chun left, Rodriguez settled into the guard chair and looked at the creature thoughtfully. "So," he said, "want to hear about the time I accidentally started a diplomatic incident because I couldn't pronounce the Altarian word for bathroom?" The creature moved closer to the window. For the next 8 hours, Rodriguez regaled his audience with increasingly ridiculous stories from his military career. The creature seemed particularly fascinated by tales of human incompetence leading to unexpected success, tilting its head in what Rodriguez began to interpret as amusement. "The thing about humans," Rodriguez found himself saying as his shift wound down, "is that we're really good at screwing things up in ways that somehow make them better. We call it happy accidents, but honestly, I think we just refuse to accept that failure is permanent." The creature had been completely still for the past hour, and Rodriguez wondered if it had fallen asleep. Then it moved, slowly approaching the glass and pressing both hands against it in what was unmistakably a gesture of gratitude. "You're welcome, friend," Rodriguez said softly. When Specialist Park arrived for the night shift, she found detailed notes from both previous guards and a creature that seemed genuinely calm for the first time since its capture. "Wow," she breathed, looking through the observation window. "You're actually kind of beautiful, aren't you?" The creature perked up at her voice, moving to the window with what Park could only describe as eagerness. She'd studied xenobiology before joining the military, and her trained eye picked up details that others might have missed. The creature's posture had changed dramatically since the initial capture footage. Where once it had moved with predatory grace, now it seemed more relaxed, more hopeful. "Sarah and Mike have been taking good care of you, haven't they?" Park said, settling into the guard chair. "I'm Jenny. I'm supposed to watch you through the night, but honestly, I think you've been doing more watching than anything else." She pulled out her personal tablet and began sketching the creature, trying to capture the subtle details of its form and movement. As she drew, she talked about art, about her attempts to understand alien aesthetics, about the way beauty manifested differently across species. "You know what I think?" she said after a few hours of comfortable silence. "I think whoever made you put a lot of love into the work. You're not just functional, you're elegant, purposeful. Someone cared about how you turned out." The creature had been watching her draw, and now it began to move in slow, deliberate patterns. It took Park several minutes to realize what she was seeing. Are you trying to show me something?" she asked, putting down her tablet. The creature continued its careful movements, and Park suddenly understood. It was demonstrating the forms and patterns built into its own structure, sharing the aesthetic principles that governed its existence. "You're an artist too," she whispered in wonder. "Aren't you? Or at least you understand art." For the rest of her shift, Park and the creature engaged in a silent dialogue of movement and form. The creature would demonstrate a pattern, and Park would sketch it. Then show her own interpretations. The exchange was wordless, but unmistakably communicative. As dawn approached, and Commander Chun returned for her second-day shift, Park felt a profound sense of connection with the being in the cell. This wasn't a monster or a weapon, or even just an intelligent alien. This was an individual with its own thoughts, feelings, and way of seeing the universe. "How did it go?" Chun asked. "I think," Park said slowly, "we've been looking at this all wrong. This isn't a creature or a subject or even a prisoner. This is someone who's been trying to communicate with us from the very beginning. We just weren't listening." Chun looked through the window at Subject 47, who had positioned itself near the observation point as if waiting for the day's conversation to begin. The transformation was remarkable. Gone was the menacing presence that had terrified seasoned warriors. In its place was something that seemed almost hopeful. "Hello again," Chun said into the comm system. "Ready for another day together?" The creature pressed both hands to the glass and held them there, a gesture that Chun was beginning to recognize as its way of saying yes. Outside Containment Cell 7, something unprecedented was happening. For the first time since its capture, Subject 47 was calm, cooperative, and showing clear signs of intelligent communication. The three human guards had achieved in 2 days what months of traditional containment protocols had failed to accomplish. But Chun, Rodriguez, and Park were beginning to suspect that their success had created a new problem. They weren't just guarding a dangerous alien anymore. They were caring for a sentient being who had been imprisoned without trial, studied without consent, and isolated without hope. The question was, what were they going to do about it? As Chun settled in for her second day with the creature, she had a feeling that their real journey was just beginning. Commander Chun had been watching Subject 47 for 3 weeks now, and she was certain of one thing. This being was desperately trying to communicate something important. The creature had developed a series of gestures and movements that seemed deliberate, almost ritualistic. When Shin spoke about Earth, it would trace patterns in the air that resembled orbital mechanics. When she mentioned her family, it would curl into positions that somehow conveyed protection and care. "Commander," Specialist Park said during their shift change, "I've been documenting the creature's movements. Look at this." She showed Chun her tablet, displaying dozens of sketches and movement patterns. "These aren't random. There's a mathematical precision to everything it does. I think it's trying to teach us its language." Chun studied the drawings. The patterns were beautiful, complex geometric forms that seemed to flow and evolve. "Have you shown these to the linguistics team?" "That's the problem. Command won't authorize any additional personnel for this assignment. As far as they're concerned, we're just guards maintaining containment." Park's expression darkened. "Commander Zextai told me yesterday that once the Council finishes reviewing our security improvements, they're planning to transfer Subject 47 to the Research Division for enhanced interrogation." Chun felt ice form in her stomach. Enhanced interrogation was a euphemism for torture, justified by claiming the subject posed a threat to galactic security. She'd seen the aftermath of such procedures on other worlds during her peacekeeping tours. Even humans with their reputation for resilience rarely survive them intact. "We can't let that happen," Chun said quietly. "I was hoping you'd say that," Park replied, "because Mike and I have been talking, and we think we know what Subject 47 is trying to tell us." That evening, the three human guards met in Chen's quarters to discuss what they'd learned. Rodriguez had brought a bottle of Earth whiskey, contraband on Confederation stations, but nobody cared enough about human customs to enforce the regulations strictly. "Okay," Chen said, pouring 3 small glasses. "What have we figured out?" Park spread her sketches across the table. "The creature isn't from Kepler 442b originally. Those movement patterns it's been showing us, they're star charts. It's been trying to tell us where it really came from." Rodriguez pulled up his own notes on his tablet. "And I think I know why it was on that dead planet. It wasn't guarding anything, it was mourning." Chen raised an eyebrow. "Mourning? Think about it," Rodriguez continued. "Every time I tell stories about loss or grief, it responds differently. More intense, more focused. And when I mentioned visiting my grandfather's grave last month, it did this thing. He stood and demonstrated a complex posture, arms wrapped around its torso in a gesture unmistakably protective. It was paying respects, Park said softly. The station where we found it must have been important to its people. Maybe their version of a cemetery or memorial site. Chun felt pieces clicking together in her mind. So we didn't capture a weapon or a guardian. We kidnapped someone while they were visiting their dead relatives. It gets worse, Park added. Based on the star charts it's been showing me, its homeworld is in the Andromeda Galaxy. Do you know what that means? The three humans sat in silence, absorbing the implications. Andromeda was 2.5 million light-years away. Even with Confederation technology, the journey would take centuries. Subject 47 was impossibly far from home, surrounded by aliens who saw it only as a threat to be contained or studied. No wonder every other species was affected by its presence, Chin said. It wasn't attacking them psychically. It was grieving so intensely that empathetic species could feel its emotional state. Humans are empathetic too, Rodriguez pointed out. But we're also stubborn, Park replied with a bitter smile. We don't let other people's emotions overwhelm us as easily. We see someone in pain and try to help instead of running away. Chen drained her whiskey. We need to get out of here. Commander, Rodriguez said carefully, that's treason. If we help it escape. If we don't help it escape, we're accessories to torture, Chen interrupted. And eventually murder. You know what enhanced interrogation does to alien physiology. The research division has never had a subject survive more than 6 months. Even if we could get it out of containment, Park said, where we take it, it's literally millions of years of travel from home. Chin was quiet for several minutes, thinking. Finally, she looked up at her companions. What if home isn't the point? What if we just need to get it somewhere safe, where it can live freely? The Outer Rim territories, Rodriguez said immediately. Beyond Confederation jurisdiction. There are human colonies out there that don't ask too many questions about refugees. That's still theft of a classified alien artifact, Park pointed out. We'd never be able to return to Confederation space. I know, Chin said quietly. Are you both willing to give up everything for someone we can't even have a proper conversation with yet? Rodriguez and Park exchanged glances. They'd been soldiers long enough to recognize a moment that would define the rest of their lives. Hell yes, Rodriguez said. When do we start? Park added. The next morning, Chin began her shift as usual, chatting with Subject 47 about her daughter's upcoming graduation from xenobiology school. But today, she had a different agenda. I need to ask you something important, she said to the creature. My friends and I think we understand what happened to you. You were taken from a place that was sacred to your people, weren't you? The creature moved to the observation window, pressing both hands against the glass in what Chun had learned was its way of confirming understanding. We want to help you, Chun continued. We can't take you home. It's too far away. But we might be able to take you somewhere safe where you could live freely. Would you trust us to try? The creature stepped back from the window and began one of its complex movement sequences. But this time, Chin recognized some of the gestures from Park's sketches. It was asking questions. How? When? What would happen to the humans afterward? Chun felt tears prick her eyes. Even facing the possibility of escape, Subject 47's first concern was for their welfare. We'll figure out, she promised. But I need to know, do you want to be free? The creature moved to the window again, placing one elongated hand against the glass. Then it did something it had never done before. It vocalized. The sound was unlike anything Chun had ever heard. Part music, part mathematics, part pure emotion. It lasted only seconds, but in those moments, Chun felt the weight of countless light years of separation, the ache of loss too profound for words, and underneath it all, a desperate hope that someone, somewhere might understand. Yes, Chun whispered. We hear you. That evening, the three humans began planning in earnest. The security systems around Containment Cell 7 were formidable, but they had advantages that previous escape attempts lacked. Legitimate access, detailed knowledge of guard rotations, and, most importantly, cooperation from the prisoner. The key is making it look like an accident, Rodriguez explained, sketching rough diagrams of the facility layout. If security thinks Subject 47 broke out through its own abilities, they'll focus on recapture rather than investigating how it happened. The gravitic field generators, Park added. If we overload them during a scheduled maintenance cycle, it would look like equipment failure. The power surge would disable the containment barrier long enough for an escape. Chin studied their improvised escape plan. It was risky, relying on precise timing, and more luck than she was comfortable with. But it was their best option. What about transport? She asked. I've been talking to Captain Morrison from the human transport ship Resilient, Rodriguez said. Officially, she's here delivering medical supplies. Unofficially, she's been smuggling refugees to the Outer Rim for years. Morrison owes me a favor from the Proxima conflict. She'd risk her ship and crew for this? Captain Morrison once spent 6 months hiding Altarian War orphans in her cargo bay, Rodriguez replied. She's good people. The next few days passed in a blur of careful preparation. Chun continued her normal routine with Subject 47, but now their conversations had a different quality. The creature seemed to sense that change was coming, its movements becoming more animated, more hopeful. Park spent her shifts teaching the creature basic human gestures and expressions, reasoning that it would need to communicate with potential allies in the Outer Rim. To her amazement, Subject 47 proved to be a remarkably quick study, mastering thumbs up, head nods, and even an approximation of a human smile within hours. Rodriguez used his maintenance access to make subtle adjustments to the gravitic field generators, introducing instabilities that would cascade into total failure when triggered. His engineering background from before joining the military made the sabotage virtually undetectable. On the designated night, everything went according to plan. Rodriguez triggered the maintenance cycle at exactly 0347 hours when the night shift was at its smallest and most distracted. The gravitic fields fluctuated, sparked, and died with a cascade of alarms that sent technicians scrambling to prevent a station-wide power failure. In the confusion, the containment barrier around Cell 7 flickered and failed. Chun was there, supposedly investigating the disturbance, when Subject 47 stepped through the opening. This way, she whispered, leading the creature through service corridors she'd memorized weeks earlier. Stay close and stay quiet. The creature moved with fluid grace, its elongated limbs allowing it to navigate tight spaces that would challenge most species. More importantly, it seemed to understand the need for stealth, following Chen's lead without hesitation. They met Rodriguez and Park at Docking Bay 7, where Captain Morrison's ship waited with its cargo bay doors open. Jesus Christ! Morrison breathed when she saw Subject 47. That's your VIP passenger? This is our friend, Chun corrected firmly. It needs safe passage to the Outer Rim, no questions asked. Morrison studied the creature for a long moment. Subject 47 looked back at her, then slowly extended one hand in the human greeting gesture Park had taught it. Well, I'll be damned, Morrison said, shaking the offered hand. Any friend of yours is welcome on my ship. But we need to move fast. I'm detecting security sweeps heading this way. The 3 guards said their quick goodbyes to Subject 47, each receiving what they'd come to recognize as its gesture of gratitude. Both hands pressed to its chest, then extended outward. Take care of yourself, Chin said softly. You deserve to be free. The creature looked at her for a long moment, then did something that stopped her heart. In a voice that was clearly struggling with human vocal patterns, it said, Thank you, boss. Dad. Chun stared in shock. Rodriguez and Park looked equally stunned. Boss Dad, Rodriguez repeated. It's been listening to us talk about families, Park realized. It thinks Chun is our parental figure, our pack leader. In its culture, that must be Boss Dad. Tears streamed down Chen's face as she realized the creature had been learning their language all along, waiting for the right moment to express its gratitude. You're welcome, sweetheart, she whispered. You're so very welcome. Captain Morrison's ship launched 18 minutes later, just before the security lockdown sealed the station. By the time Commander Zextai discovered that Subject 47 was missing and his 3 human guards were somehow involved, the Resilient was already beyond Confederation jurisdiction. The investigation that followed was swift and brutal. Security footage showed the 3 humans in the vicinity of the escape, but the evidence was circumstantial. Without proof of deliberate sabotage, Confederation law couldn't prosecute them for negligence alone. Still, their military careers were over. Chun, Rodriguez, and Park found themselves discharged and banned from Confederation space for life. Any regrets? Chun asked as they waited for transport to the Outer Rim territories. Only one, Rodriguez replied. I wish we could have said goodbye properly. I think we did, Park said softly, looking out at the stars. When it called us family. 6 months later, they received an encrypted message through underground channels. It contained star charts, mathematical equations, and what appeared to be artistic representations of 3 humans. At the bottom, in carefully printed English letters, was a simple message. Boss Dad's safe. Thank you, family. Home found. Chun smiled through her tears, knowing that somewhere among the stars, their friend was finally free. 3 years had passed since the escape from Station Kepler 7, and Chun, Rodriguez, and Park had built a quiet life in the Outer Rim territories. They'd settled on Haven's Edge, a human colony world where questions about past affiliations were considered impolite, and helping refugees was simply good neighborly conduct. Chun ran a small school for colonial children, teaching everything from basic mathematics to xenobiology. Rodriguez had found work maintaining the atmosphere processors that kept the colony's air breathable. Park operated an art therapy center for traumatized refugees from various conflicts across the galaxy. They lived simply, but they were content. The guilt they'd expected to feel about abandoning their military careers had never materialized. Instead, they felt a profound sense of rightness about their choice, as if helping Subject 47, whom they'd privately named Echo, had been the most important thing they'd ever done. That peaceful existence shattered on a Tuesday morning when Captain Morrison's ship appeared in Haven's Edge's orbital space, broadcasting an emergency beacon. Chun received the call at her school, where she'd been explaining the basics of atmosphere composition to a class of 8-year-olds. The voice on the comm was Morrison's, but strained with exhaustion and something else, excitement. Sarah, I need you and your team at the spaceport immediately. I've got a situation that's going to blow your mind. Chun dismissed her class early and called Rodriguez and Park. Within an hour, the 3 former guards stood in Morrison's cargo bay, staring at something impossible. Echo was there, but it wasn't alone. Surrounding it were 12 other beings of the same species, tall, elegant creatures with that same fluid grace and elongated limbs. They moved with obvious deference to Echo, but their body language suggested family rather than hierarchy. Echo, Chun whispered. The creature they'd helped escape 3 years ago turned at the sound of her voice, and Chun gasped. Echo had changed dramatically. Where once its chitinous armor had been matte black, now it gleamed with subtle iridescence. More importantly, it moved with a confidence and joy that had been completely absent during its captivity. Boss Dad. Echo's voice was clearer now, the human vocal patterns more refined. It approached Chun with obvious delight, extending both hands in the greeting gesture they'd taught it years ago. My God, Rodriguez breathed. You learned to speak properly. Learn many things, Echo replied, its voice carrying musical undertones that suggested complex emotions. Learn home, not place. Home is family. One of the other creatures stepped forward, and Chun realized with a start that this one was smaller, younger than Echo. When it spoke, its voice was lighter, almost childlike. Boss Dad, who saved Echo Parent from Cage Place? Chun looked at Echo in amazement. You had a child? Not had. Echo corrected gently. Found. Like Boss Dad found Echo. Tam Small was alone, hiding in shipwreck. Echo remembered Boss Dad kindness, chose to help instead of leave. The young creature, Tam, approached Chun with obvious curiosity. Echo Parent tells stories of Boss Dad family, stories of learning places and picture making and food sharing. Tam wants to learn human ways too. Captain Morrison cleared her throat. That's actually why I brought them here. Echo found me 6 months ago through smuggler networks. It's been looking for you three ever since. But why? Park asked. We helped it escape. Shouldn't that be the end of the story? Echo tilted its head in that gesture they remembered so well. Boss Dad family taught Echo most important thing. When you find good people, you keep them close. When you find family, you protect family. Another of the creatures stepped forward, this one bearing scars that spoke of recent conflict. When it spoke, its voice was harder than Echo's, carrying the weight of someone who had seen too much violence. I am Rex Warrior, it said. Echo tells truth words about human kindness. My people scattered across dark space, hiding from hunter ships. Echo says humans help without asking for payment price. Chun felt the weight of 13 pairs of alien eyes focusing on her. Hunter ships. The hegemony found our refugee camps in the Triangulum system. Morrison explained grimly. Wiped out 3 colonies before anyone could escape. These folks have been running ever since. Rex Warrior's posture shifted to something that conveyed urgency. Hunter ships follow our heat trails through jump space. We have perhaps 10-day cycles before they find this place. You can't stay here, Rodriguez said immediately. Haven's Edge has no defenses. If the hegemony shows up, they'll kill everyone on the planet to prevent witnesses. We know this, Echo said sadly. But nowhere is safe for Echo's people. Too few ships, too many young ones who cannot travel far distance. Echo hoped Boss Dad family might have wisdom ideas. Chen looked at her companions, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. They'd spent 3 peaceful years on Haven's Edge, building new lives and trying to forget the moral compromises of their military careers. But the moment Echo had walked back into their lives, all of that peaceful existence had revealed itself as simply an intermission between acts of a larger story. How many refugees are we talking about? Chen asked. 4,732 individuals, Rex Warrior replied precisely, including 1,200 young ones who cannot defend themselves. Jesus Rodriguez Muterid. That's a small city. Park had been studying the assembled aliens with her artist's eye for detail. You said you found Tam in a shipwreck. Are there others? Other species being hunted by the hegemony. Many others, confirmed another of Echo's people. This one bearing the decorative markings that Park had learned indicated educators or record keepers among their kind. Hegemony declares all non-conforming species to be threats requiring elimination. We estimate 47 different refugee populations currently fleeing through this sector. The scope of the crisis was staggering. Chen tried to process the numbers. Nearly 5,000 of Echo's people, plus unknown thousands from dozens of other species, all fleeing genocide while the Confederation did nothing. Why isn't the Confederation intervening? She asked. Captain Morrison's expression darkened. Politics. The hegemony has been careful to only target species that aren't Confederation members. Officially, it's an internal matter for each species to handle. Unofficially, the Council's afraid of starting a war they might not win. So they're just letting people die, Rodriguez said flatly. Welcome to galactic diplomacy, Morrison replied bitterly. Echo moved closer to Chun, its posture conveying both hope and resignation. Boss Dad family not responsible for Echo problems. Already gave more kindness than Echo deserved. But if Boss Dad has wisdom ideas for saving families, Echo would listen with grateful heart. Chen closed her eyes, thinking furiously. For 1,000 refugees with nowhere to go and enemy ships closing in, Haven's Edge couldn't support that many people, even if they could somehow hide them from the hegemony. The other human colonies were either too small or too close to Confederation space to be safe. Then an idea began to form. Crazy, impossible, but maybe workable. What if we didn't try to hide them? She said slowly. What if we made them impossible to attack? Explain, Rex Warrior demanded. The hegemony can hunt refugees because they're scattered, defenseless, and isolated. But what if they weren't? What if instead of running separately, all these refugee populations came together in one place? Boss Dad suggests target concentration. Echo asked, clearly confused. Make easier for hunter ships to find all? No, Chin said, excitement building in her voice. I'm suggesting we make the target too valuable to attack. Rodriguez, what's the one thing every species in this sector needs? Rodriguez's eyes lit up with understanding. Medical supplies. The plague outbreak in the Vega system has created shortages everywhere. Exactly. And, Park, what do humans have that nobody else seems to understand? Adaptive logistics. Park replied immediately. We're really good at making things work with whatever resources we have available. Chin nodded. So here's what we do. We find a suitable system, something with multiple habitable worlds or large stations. We invite all the refugee populations to come together there. Then we turn the whole thing into the galaxy's premier medical research and manufacturing facility. A sanctuary disguised as a business, Morrison said slowly. That's actually brilliant. Hard to justify attacking a place that produces medicines everyone needs. But where would we find such a system? Rex Warrior asked. And how would we convince 47 different species to trust each other enough to work together? As for location, Chun said, I might have an idea. Park, remember that abandoned foreigner facility in the Cassiopeia Void? The one your xenoarchaeology professor mentioned in her lectures. Park's eyes widened. The Nexus? Sarah, that place is enormous. Multiple ring habitats, manufacturing facilities, even its own defensive systems. But it's been dead for 10,000 years. Dead, but not destroyed, Chen pointed out. Human engineering teams have been reverse engineering Forerunner technology for decades. If we could get a team there, we could make it livable again, Rodriguez finished. Power, life support, gravity, it's all there just waiting to be reactivated. Echo had been following the conversation with obvious concentration. Boss Dad speaks of great undertaking. Would require many ships, many people working together purpose. Why would humans do such thing for strangers? Shin looked at Echo, remembering their first conversation 3 years ago when she'd seen nothing but a frightened being trapped far from home. Because that's what families do for each other. And, like you said, Echo were family. Over the next several hours, they worked out the basics of what would become known as the Nexus Project. Chin would use her educational background to coordinate the research aspects. Rodriguez would lead the engineering teams responsible for reactivating the ancient technology. Park would handle cultural integration, helping dozens of species learn to work together. Captain Morrison would coordinate the transportation network, moving refugees and supplies through a web of sympathetic smugglers and traders. Most importantly, Echo and its people would serve as ambassadors to the other refugee populations, explaining the project and inviting them to join. It's going to take months just to get everyone to the Nexus, Morrison warned. And that's assuming we can get the facility operational before the first wave of refugees arrives. Then, we better get started, Chun said. Rex Warrior, how long do we have before the hegemony tracks your people here? 8-day cycles, perhaps 9, the scarred alien replied. That gives us enough time to get the first engineering teams to the Nexus and start preliminary surveys, Rodriguez calculated. If we push hard, we might have basic life support running within a month. What about supplies? Park asked. Tools, raw materials, medical equipment. We're talking about supporting thousands of people. Echo stepped forward, its posture conveying both determination and hope. Echo knows many trading people, many ship captains who help refugees. Not all Galaxy supports hegemony hatred. Many want to help, but not know how. Boss Dad gives them purpose way to help. The young alien, Tam, had been listening intently to the conversation. Now it spoke up in its clear, musical voice. Tam wants to help too. Can learn human ways, teach to other young ones. Make bridge between people groups. Chun felt tears prick her eyes. 3 years ago, She'd helped one frightened alien escape from prison. Now that same being was proposing to create a haven for thousands of refugees from across the galaxy. Yes, she said firmly. Yes, you can help. All of you can help. Rex Warrior stepped forward, its scarred features somehow conveying fierce approval. This is good plan. Better than hiding in dark space, waiting for hunter ships to find us. Rex Warrior pledges combat knowledge to defense of Sanctuary Place. Then it's settled, Chun said. We're going to build something the galaxy has never seen before. A place where being different isn't dangerous, where refugees can become citizens, where families can stay together. Echo approached her, placing both hands on her shoulders in a gesture that conveyed profound gratitude. Boss Dad makes Echo heart full with joy feeling. We'll be honored to work together purpose for helping all families. As the group began making detailed plans for the Nexus project, Chun realized that their quiet retirement had officially ended. They were about to embark on something that would either save thousands of lives or get them all killed. Either way, it was the right thing to do. Echo, she said quietly, are you ready to go home? Boss Dad. Echo replied with what she was learning to recognize as its version of a smile. Echo already is home. Home is wherever family works together. Outside, the stars of the outer rim beckoned, hiding both danger and possibility among their distant lights. But for the first time in 3 years, Chun felt like she was exactly where she belonged, not as a guard or protector, but as part of something larger than herself. The real work was just beginning. 2 years had passed since the first refugees arrived at the Nexus, and what had begun as a desperate gamble had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. The ancient Forerunner facility hummed with life as beings from 63 different species worked together to build something entirely new. Commander Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of Central Hub 7, watching the morning shift change across the vast ring habitats. Kytherian engineers worked alongside human technicians to maintain the atmosphere processors. Altarian medical researchers collaborated with Echo's people to develop new treatments for interspecies disease. Children from a dozen different worlds played together in the communal gardens, their laughter echoing through corridors that had been silent for millennia. Hard to believe it's only been 2 years, Rodriguez said, joining Chun at the observation window. His hair had gone completely gray during the construction phase, but his eyes held a satisfaction that military service had never provided. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, Chun replied. Other times, like we just started yesterday. The Nexus had grown beyond their wildest projections. What began as a refuge for Echo's people and a few other refugee groups had become a beacon of hope for displaced beings throughout the local cluster. The medical research facility they'd established as cover had become genuinely vital to the galactic economy, producing treatments and technologies that couldn't be developed anywhere else. More importantly, the Nexus had proven something that most galactic powers had considered impossible. Radically different species could not only coexist, but thrive together when given the chance. Report from the outer perimeter, Park's voice crackled over the comm system. We've got incoming ships, but they're not on any schedule. Looks like oh my. Chun and Rodriguez exchanged worried glances. Park rarely sounded surprised anymore. She'd seen too much during the Nexus construction to be easily impressed. Jenny, what is it? Chun asked in her comm. You need to get down to Docking Bay 1 immediately. And bring Echo if you can find it. Chun and Rodriguez made their way through the bustling corridors of the Nexus, past the multilingual signs and the carefully designed architecture that accommodated beings ranging from meter-tall Pixians to the massive crystalline Hegemoids. After 2 years, the controlled chaos of interspecies cooperation had become as natural as breathing. They found Echo in the hydroponics bay, working alongside Tam, who had grown considerably but still retained the curiosity and enthusiasm that made it such an effective teacher for the younger refugees. Echo had become something like an unofficial mayor of the Nexus, its natural diplomatic abilities and unique perspective making it invaluable in resolving conflicts between different cultural groups. Boss Dad, Echo called out when it saw them. Its English had become remarkably fluent, though it still retained the musical undertones that marked its species' natural speech patterns. Rodriguez friend. Good timing for visiting growing places. Tam has made breakthrough with earth foods growing in station soil. Tam straightened proudly, showing them a collection of tomatoes that looked almost exactly like the ones Chun remembered from Earth. Use combination soil mixing from 5 different homeworlds. Result is Earth foods, but stronger, more vitamin stuff for station people. That's wonderful, Tam, Chin said warmly. But we need Echo to come with us to the docking bay. Jenny found something she thinks we should see. Echo's posture shifted to curiosity mixed with concern. Is danger thing? Should Rex Warrior and defense teams prepare for fight response? No, Rodriguez assured it. She sounded excited, not worried. But she was definitely surprised by something. The group made their way to Docking Bay 1, where they found Park standing at the observation port looking stunned. Beyond the transparent aluminum, 3 ships hung in space. Sleek, elegant vessels with the distinctive markings of Confederation Naval Command. Confederation ships, Rodriguez said grimly. That's not good. Wait, Chun said, studying the vessels more carefully. Those aren't military configurations. Look at the modifications. Medical bays, diplomatic quarters, expanded cargo capacity. These are relief ships. As they watched, a shuttle detached from the lead vessel and approached the docking bay. When the airlocks cycled open, the last person Chun had expected to see stepped through. Commander Zextai, the Vrex officer who had first assigned them to guard Echo years ago. The alien commander looked older, his chitinous plates bearing scars that spoke of recent conflicts. But his posture conveyed something Chun had never seen from him before: humility. Commander Chun, Zextai said formally. Sergeant Rodriguez. Specialist Park. His 4 eyes focused on Echo with an expression that was difficult to read. And you must be subject. I apologize. What name do you prefer to be called? Echo remembers kindness. Echo replied carefully. Or simply Echo, if easier for Confederation person speaking. Echo, Zextai repeated, testing the name. I have come to apologize. The words hung in the air like something tangible. Chun felt her heart skip a beat, not just because of the apology, but because of the implications of Zextai's presence here at all. Apologize for what? She asked cautiously. For everything, Zextai said heavily. For treating a sentient being as a specimen. For not recognizing the signs of grief and trauma. For nearly allowing the research division to commit atrocities in the name of galactic security. His mandibles clicked in what Chun remembered as a gesture of deep regret. And for failing to see what you 3 humans recognized immediately, that the solution to fear is understanding, not force. Echo tilted its head in that characteristic gesture. Confederation commander travels far distance to speak sorry words. This suggests important change in Confederation thinking patterns. Indeed, Zextai confirmed. The Nexus has become impossible to ignore. Your medical research has saved millions of lives across 60 different worlds. Your refugee integration protocols have become the standard for humanitarian relief operations. And your defensive strategies. He paused, mandibles clicking again. When the hegemony finally tracked your location and sent their fleet to destroy this facility, the way you repelled their attack changed everything we thought we knew about military doctrine. Shin remembered that battle 6 months ago when 93 hegemony dreadnoughts had arrived expecting to find a helpless refugee camp and instead encountered a fully integrated defense network operated by beings who fought not for conquest or ideology, but for their homes and families. The battle had lasted 18 hours and ended with the complete withdrawal of the hegemony force, not because they'd been defeated, but because they'd been convinced to leave. Echo's people had developed technologies that could neutralize weapons without destroying ships, and, more importantly, they'd broadcast the personal stories of every refugee in the Nexus directly into the minds of the attacking forces. It was hard to murder someone after you'd experienced their memories of losing their family to previous attacks. The Confederation Council has spent the past 6 months debating the implications of that battle. Zextai continued. We've been forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about our policies regarding non-member species. Such as, Rodriguez asked, such as the fact that our definition of galactic security has been narrow-minded and ultimately counterproductive. The Nexus has proven that diversity of thought and approach makes civilization stronger, not weaker. Your success here has made the Council reconsider everything we thought we knew about interspecies cooperation. Park crossed her arms. Let me guess, now that we've proven the concept works, the Confederation wants to take control of it. Actually, Zextai said, quite the opposite. The Council has voted to offer the Nexus full Confederation membership as an autonomous region. You would retain complete internal control while gaining access to our trade networks, defensive agreements, and diplomatic protections. The offer hung in the air like a diplomatic bombshell. Chen looked at Echo, whose posture conveyed surprise, mixed with suspicion. What's the catch? Chen asked. No catch, Zextai replied. Although there is a condition. The Confederation would like to establish exchange programs with the Nexus, sending our diplomats, scientists, and, yes, military officers here to learn your methods of conflict resolution and interspecies cooperation. You want us to teach you? Rodriguez said slowly. We want you to show us how to be better, Zextai corrected. The humans were right. Fear makes everything worse. The approach you three demonstrated with Echo, and that you've scaled up to include 63 different species, represents a fundamental shift in how we should approach the unknown. Echo stepped forward, its movements conveying careful consideration. Confederation Commander speaks of learning exchange. But what happens to peoples who cannot join Confederation? Hegemony still hunts many species across far stars. That, Zextai said, is why I brought 3 relief ships and volunteer crews from 17 different worlds. We'd like to formally request the Nexus's assistance in establishing additional facilities in other sectors. With Confederation backing and Nexus expertise, we could save thousands more refugees. Chun felt tears prick her eyes as she realized the scope of what Zextai was proposing. The experiment they'd started as a desperate attempt to save Echo's people had become the foundation for a new approach to galactic civilization. There's something else, Zextai added. A personal matter. He turned to face Echo directly. I've spent considerable time researching your species and their history. I believe we know where your original homeworld was located. Echo's entire posture shifted, conveying an emotion so intense that even Chun, who had learned to read its body language better than anyone, couldn't identify all the components. Homeworld is gone place, Echo said carefully. Star death consumed all worlds and birth system. Your birth system, yes, Zextai confirmed, but not your species' original homeworld. Echo, your people were travelers long before the star death. We've found records of at least 47 different colonies established across multiple galaxies over the past 50,000 years. Many of them may still survive. The silence that followed was profound. Then, Tam, who had been listening intently to the entire conversation, spoke up. Echo Parent could see other nest families, other people of same kind who remember old songs and star patterns. It's possible, Zextai said gently. The Confederation's deep space exploration vessels could begin searching for these colonies. If any survive, we could establish contact. Echo turned to Chun, its posture conveying a complex mixture of hope and uncertainty. Boss Dad, what does human wisdom say about looking for lost things? Is safe to hope for finding family people who may not exist anymore. Chun stepped forward and placed her hand on Echo's shoulder, feeling the slight vibration that indicated deep emotion among its species. Echo, 3 years ago, I thought I was just doing my job as a guard. I had no idea I was meeting someone who would become family, or that helping one person escape would lead to all this. She gestured around at the bustling station, the mixed crowds of beings working together. Sometimes the best things happen when we take chances on hope. Echo was quiet for several moments, then straightened into a posture Chun had learned indicated major decision-making. Echo chooses Hope Path, but not alone. If Confederation helps find Echo birth people, Echo wants Boss Dad family to come for meeting journey. Family should meet family. Rodriguez grinned. Wouldn't miss it for anything. Count me in, Park added. This whole adventure started because we refused to abandon family. I'm not about to start now. Zextai's mandibles clicked in what Chun now recognized as approval. Then it's settled. The Confederation will provide resources and ships for the search. The Nexus will share its expertise in establishing new refugee facilities. And together, we'll build something that serves everyone's needs. As they worked out the details over the following hours, Chen found herself amazed by how far they'd all come. Echo had evolved from a terrified prisoner to a community leader, helping coordinate relief efforts across 3-star systems. She, Rodriguez, and Park had gone from disgraced ex-soldiers to respected diplomats whose opinions shaped Confederation policy. Most importantly, the galaxy itself was learning that diversity wasn't something to be feared or controlled, but celebrated and protected. That evening, Chen stood once again on the observation deck, watching the lights of the Nexus sparkle against the stars. The 3 Confederation ships hung nearby, their crews working alongside Nexus engineers to plan the next phase of expansion. Echo joined her, moving with the quiet grace that had once seemed so alien and now felt comfortingly familiar. Boss Dad, it said softly. Echo has questioned thought for sharing. What is it? When Echo first called human family Boss Dad, was because of confusion about human word meanings. But now, after learning much about human concepts of parent figures, Echo paused, its posture conveying careful consideration. Echo wonders if Boss Dad would accept formal family bonds? Not legal bonds, but heart bonds. Echo choosing Chun person as true parent, if such thing would bring happiness. Chun felt her throat tighten with emotion. Over the past 5 years, Echo had become the child she'd never had, the family member she'd never expected to find among the stars. The fact that it was now choosing to formalize that relationship meant more than any military decoration or diplomatic recognition ever could. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Echo. I would be honored to be your family in every sense of the word. And Rodriguez person and Park person? We're a package deal, Chun said, smiling through her tears. You get all of us or none of us. Echo's posture conveyed what she'd learned to recognize as profound joy. Then, Echo heart is complete full with happiness. Has birth family among stars. Has choice family here on station. Has hope family yet to be found. All good things. As they stood together watching the stars, Chen reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. A routine guard assignment had become the foundation for a new form of galactic civilization. A misunderstanding about titles had created bonds stronger than blood, and a simple act of kindness toward a frightened prisoner had rippled outward to affect the lives of millions. Echo, she said quietly, do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd never met? Every day, Echo replied. And every day, Echo chooses gratitude for reality path instead of worry for never was paths. Boss Dad taught Echo most important lesson. When you find good people, you keep them close. When you find family, you protect family. When you find hope, you share hope. In the distance, the first of the new relief ships began its journey toward the outer rim, carrying supplies and Nexus-trained teams to establish another facility for refugees. Soon, there would be dozens of such stations, each one a beacon of hope for beings displaced by war and persecution. It had all started with 3 humans who refused to see a prisoner as a monster, and 1 alien who had the courage to trust them despite every reason for fear. Now, it was something much larger, a new way of being in the galaxy, where difference was strength and family was something you chose rather than something you were born into. Ready for the next adventure, Echo? Always ready, Boss Dad. Family journey never ends, just finds new paths to explore. Together, they watched the ships depart for distant stars, carrying with them the promise that no being would have to face the darkness alone. In a galaxy full of wonders and terrors, they had built something precious, a home where everyone belonged, and family meant everyone who chose to care for each other. The future was uncertain, but it was a future they would face together.